Good evening from London, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling, insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. Today, it's Sunday Funday, and you know what that means. It means we're going to be playing a game. But what game are we going to be playing? Well, I'll break it down in just a second. But before I do, let me introduce the panel, and let's kick things off with the co-host, Clark Taylor. Clark, how are you today?
What's up? I'm stoked to be here. I actually did get to sleep in this morning. Supposed to be my second show of the day, but it is my first, so I'm fresh and I'm ready to go. Not only that, I basically get a practice round as the golfer that I am for fantasy football drafts merely 2 months away. And so I want to make sure that my draft board's tight. I'm ready to roll. And I'm excited to get into it, man. I've got some surprise picks that I hope don't get taken off the board, and I've got some logical ones that everyone's going to expect.
That probably will be taken off the board. I mean, talking about, fantasy football and all of that, right? I've now, been interested in the NFL for a season. Maybe this year, maybe I try
Wrestling
and get
Republic
involved.
League. Wrestling Republic League, let's do it.
As long as in the football, the soccer, as you'd call it, season, you guys are also involved in this too. We do that Wrestling Republic League for all the sports, all the leagues, and all that good stuff. But also joining us today, we have Soul. How are you today, Soul?
I'm good. So the main reason why my screen's off is, well, lads, what am I known for on Wrestling Republic? Besides
stuff?
That, but making dumb decisions with my hair.
Saying a lot of things.
Yeah, that too, and being things. So I've done this.
Nice.
That looks good,
dude.
Yeah. I mean, my family's out of like a peacock, but I'll take it. It's better than something else. But you know what? Styling it up. I'm not shaving it all off, which is a nice treat. I actually have some partial things, but I mean, hey, I still got more hair than Ignacio, so I'll go up there.
And me combined.
Well, also joining us today, we have Ignacio. How are you, Ignacio?
How's it going, everybody? Doing pretty good. I don't look good with hair, so that's why I shave it off all the time. I'm one of those people who just don't look good with hair. But Ben, I got a private message the other day in a group chat that I am. That's they're telling me I'm not that controversial anymore. That I haven't been that controversial on the show in a while, at least a couple months.
Oh.
My last rant, I think it was with on Kenny Omega or something like that. So, but that's because usually when I'm on the show, I'm on Saturday and we're talking about SmackDown. Man, there's really nothing bad going on in WWE right now. I've nitpicked a couple things here and there that I believe in or wanted to bring up, but I'll make an effort within the next month or so to maybe schedule a couple of shows during the week, so that way I can tear apart AEW because it's god awful.
Oh, come on now, old timer.
Someone decided to go to the zoo and stick their hands in the bear cage. Ignacio, not controversial. What were they thinking? Who would say that?
Well, Clark, you've been controversial today. I'll tell you that if you've seen the comments of your latest reel with Anthony.
Yeah. What have you done there? You've literally poked the whole NXT universe right there and got them all ready to pillage.
The irony is, I'm a huge NXT guy. I really don't understand how contextually that one I got buried for.
Oh, I got buried for it somehow. I tried to defend everybody has an opinion, and I've been getting buried for it.
What did I even say? I haven't actually seen it yet.
You said that Carmelo Hayes just is basically a failure on the main roster. That's what you know.
I said he hasn't been doing well.
Anthony's the one who doubled down on that. Mr. Opinion himself of Ricciardi went nuclear.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh yeah.
We don't have to agree.
Yeah,
I was just involved.
You made the cut and Anthony tore the stitches. It is a bit of a brutal one, but let's talk
that's life.
let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Now, we're going to be doing today a draft for British wrestlers and of all time, any era, whatever. We're going to be ranking the best British wrestlers. Now, the way it's going to work is we did a random name generator and I have the first pick. I promise it is random, but yeah, I have the first pick. Soul has the second pick.
Promises.
I literally did it on air with them before the show, showed it to them. Clark's got the third pick, and Ignacio's got the fourth pick. But then the fifth pick will go to Ignacio, and then it'll come back round. So it's like a snake draft, a serpent draft, whatever you call it. Serpentine, whatever you want to call it, right? It's really easy to do. But the bottom line is I've got the first pick. And for the first pick, I believe the best British wrestler of all time is the only British wrestler to main event a WrestleMania, and that man is Drew McIntyre. The stats speak for themselves. Technically, nobody's stats beat this guy. He's a former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, former WrestleMania main eventer. He won the main event of WrestleMania. He won the Royal Rumble. And not only that, but this guy's career, well, it was considered a write-off by many people. A lot of people were saying that, hey, he was meant to be the chosen one, and he didn't live up to the hype. But he persevered, he kept going, and look at him now. He's a main event star, and hopefully a week from yesterday, so next Saturday, he's going to kick off Damian Priest's head and become the new World Heavyweight Champion. My first pick is Drew McIntyre. But, Soul, who is your first pick?
Like, you took the Scotsman. That's annoyed me. So, you know what? I'm going to take one of the Englishmen. I know you are, in Welsh, but, accent sounds English to me, so I'm going to, on bias grounds, I'm going to pick somebody who has basically grown up with the British scene, dominated it in Progress, Rev Pro, and every other company in this goddamn country. He has absolutely smashed it. Went over to New Japan as well, built an empire. Now he's in AEW as the international champion. That is indeed Billy Goat Will Ospreay. The man has done it all. Honestly, what can you say within the British scene? Ospreay's done it. He was one of the hottest acts in New Japan. A guy, from England to go over and do all that stuff as well, and coming back home as well. During the pandemic era, really cemented himself within New Japan as well and showed that commitment. Now in AEW as well, he's been somebody that has went into the company with a great attitude and just absolutely smashed it. Banger matches with Katesha, with Nell Bryan, beating Roger Strong for the International Championship. And he's going to be challenging Swerve Strickland for the AEW World Championship at Forbidden Door. And he's not even, 6 months into the company now at this full-time roster. Dude's absolutely a machine. And when you speak to a lot of young people within our scene as well, who do you want to grow up and be like? Ospreay is probably the name that they're going to say the most because he essentially is the spirit of British wrestling.
Absolutely. A great choice. No doubt about it. Will Ospreay, I'd have loved to have picked him. But Clark, well, who would you have loved to pick? Well, who are you going to pick?
So this, to me, is my most interesting pick in this entire draft. Because I know Ignacio pretty well and we're good buddies, I think it's between two people here. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to get one and he's going to get the other. They tagged together. They're two that carried that British flag for a long time. And I wasn't sure which one I was going to go with the whole way. One of them, the Dynamite Kid, dominated for a long time, but also set the stage for some of the high flying and wrestling style stuff that we've seen of late. And I hate to do this to you, Ignacio, but he did invent flip-flopping and flying, and that's why I'm going to take Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, so you can't have him and leave you with potentially Dynamite Kid.
Oh, that is infuriating. You've just taken on and on. I mean, you've just taken it. But I mean, British Bulldog here, of course, we all know that, SummerSlam 92, that huge moment. You play in all the video games and all of that. But I mean, yeah, great pick, a first round pick, no doubt about it. But you mentioned Ignacio. Ignacio, who are you going to pick as your first round pick?
So Clark, you picked Davey Boy.
I took Davey.
Okay, so I'm going to go the other way. You're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to have to go with the Dynamite Kid. And yes, they were, I wouldn't say they were the flip-flop and fly style or pioneers or anything. They definitely had that incorporated in their repertoire, if you will. But it's when they did the high flying stuff, they made it mean something. It wasn't just a spot for a spot's sake.
Very true.
You know, and I can go on and on about this, but I won't. You know, Dynamite and Davey Boy, they were kind of like, I would say they were kind of like the pioneers of the hybrid style, because they did the off the top the ropes stuff, and they also did great technical wrestling. If you go back to see them in Stampede and early days of the WWF and all that stuff, there was really nobody with their style until the Rockers showed up in the WWF. So yeah, but Dynamite was very influential character in the early cruiserweights. Chris Benoit, those matches with Tiger Mask. You know, I truly do feel that he's the greatest English-British wrestler of all time. Just with his influence over the business. I mean, you go back and watch his matches in any era, in anywhere he went, whether it be Japan, WWF, Stampede Wrestling, any other territory. I mean, he was just a phenomenal talent. And in the 80s, where it was the land of the monsters, pretty much, you know, everybody liked the big larger than life personalities and the big wrestlers. He was small in stature, and just because of his amazing talent, he had a great influence over the fans and over wrestlers to come. Chris Jericho's another one. So yeah, I think Dynamite Kid is probably the greatest English wrestler of all time. He's my first draft pick. How about
Great pick.
A really, really great pick. But the beauty of this, you know, snake style draft, Ignacio, is that it now loops right back round to you again. Who are you going to take as your first pick, the second round, the fifth overall pick?
Well, I'm going to go with a little bit of nostalgia here, because I'm familiar with his work. Maybe the viewers might not be, but after this, they can go look him up. But I'm going to go with the gentleman, Chris Adams. Because, you know, a lot of the American fans, and I'm going to address it like I'm addressing the American fans, because the British and the European fans are probably pretty familiar with them. But I mean, most of people will be familiar with work in World Class Championship Wrestling, the Dallas-based promotion that was ran by the Fritz Von Erichs. And the gentleman, Chris Adams, came in, and he was something different, had a more explosive style. He brought in that British style wrestling into the Texas territory, which was already a very aggressive type of wrestling. You had the Von Erichs, you had One Man Gang, you had Kamala, and you had the Big Monsters, and then you had the Freebirds, and it was already very rough style Southern type of wrestling. So when Chris Adams came in, a little bit different style, went hand in hand with Texas style. He was a little bit different, the best super kick, in my opinion, of all time. And not to mention, to add something in there, he trained what a lot of people think is the greatest of all time in Stone Cold Steve Austin. So how about that? So he'd be my second pick, the gentleman, Chris Adams. And his amazing work, one more thing, his amazing work with, go back and watch his work with Gino Hernandez. They were a great duo.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a brilliant pick, no doubt about it. And one of the beauties, I think, of this draft is that we're going to go back and look at, you know, some older British names, which maybe not, you know, all of the audience will be familiar with, but had a huge impact on professional wrestling, right? Because people overlook how crucial British wrestling, you know, was to the overall growth of wrestling early on in it. The boom period for UK wrestling was before it even became popular in the mainstream in America. It was during this late 60s, early 70s, to maybe the early 80s. So yeah, I think we're going to have some interesting names, that is for sure. But Clark, what interesting name are you going to take as your next pick?
So this is really interesting because I'm starting to understand some strategy here, not to give away the game plan, but I'm looking at Ignacio is going to be tough as far as taking some of the older time names that I'm really excited about on my list. But I also have to get ahead of the fact that you two are about to have a snake of 4 picks of current wrestlers, more current, not necessarily all current, but just that's got to be the assumption for me. So I'm between 2 names, and one I do believe deserves to be picked before the next, but I still think I can steal him in round 3. So I'm going with the other one, and the other one is William Regal. I'll take him before anybody else does. The guy from Blackpool, the fists, everything he's done post-career and during career, he's a legend, always will be. You can't say enough good things about Regal, so I'm going to add Regal to my team.
That is an excellent pick, no doubt about it. So I'm going to head straight to you for the next one. Who are you going to take following Clark taking Mr. Regal?
Oh, muted.
The mute curse has hit you, Saul.
Sorry, I was being polite. I was going to say, when I picked Ospreay for my first pick, he was really a wrestler who defined the 2010s to the 2020s and still does a wee bit now. So I'm really thinking of picking a wrestler who defined the 2000s to the 2010s. When you think about British wrestling back then, there was one name who really stuck out for what he did in Ring of Honor, his great matches coming over here. Obviously, his career was cut short due to circumstances, but he's always been somebody that's been idolized within the British wrestling scene. And that is, former Ring of Honor Pure Champion, World Champion, Nigel McGuinness. With Nigel McGuinness, he truly was fascinating for his style, dedicated to his craft. I remember seeing his documentary when he finally retired. He was ranked in the PWI, I think number 6 or 7, alongside at the time when like Cena and Batista were reigning on top, and he was just in Ring of Honor at that time. Really shows he had an absolute grip on the industry. And obviously he went to TNA as Desmond Wolfe. Really wasn't the heights of it. He did have some matches with Angle, and he was obviously part of that infamous Ric Flair and Jay Lethal segment as well. So there's that under his accolades. Brought back to the NXT UK tournament as a commentator. He did some commentating in NXT UK, and they were all loved as well. And we did 205 Live and some NXT takeovers over in the States. Currently in AEW now, where he's been killing on commentary, and I think his commentary is really a big addition to the commentary team in AEW. And I am really just praying we can get that final match between Bryan and Nigel as really a wrap-off for this man's career, to go out the way it should have gone out in a big stage in the UK against a legendary opponent like the Dragon, because it's Nigel bloody McGuinness, man.
Yeah, that is a great shout indeed. Nigel McGuinness, he is just so underrated, and he always was underrated, even when he was active. But he was just so good technically. And for my second pick, I am also going for somebody who's amazing technically. In fact, the person who I believe right now is the best technical wrestler on the globe. He's maybe my favorite wrestler, right? I often don't talk about my favorites, when we do Wrestling Republic and all these podcasts and all that. But this man, to me, he's like just so entertaining to watch between those ropes. And that man is Zack Sabre Jr., ZSJ. I think he's so underrated. Even now, I think New Japan are, not using him well enough, even though I do think that is the perfect place for him. He is just technically so sound. Everything he does is just so thought out, and it's not easy to do. His in-ring IQ, well, it's next to genius, if not genius, dare I say. But going into the third round, I have the first pick once again, and I'm going for a bit of a classic. I'm going for somebody who left home at the age of 16, right? But he didn't leave home at the age of 16, in the mid-2010s, in the 2020s, any of that. This man left home in the 1950s.
Oh, I think you've got my pick, Allison. I think you've got my pick, if I think I know who it is.
Yes, he is from near me, actually, in South Wales. His family, they were coal miners, right? And he decided, hey, I don't want to be a coal miner. I've seen these interesting tapes of this American wrestling, and I want to be a wrestler. Everybody looked at him like, what? Are you mad? Are you crazy? And he decided to become a professional wrestler. But if that wasn't enough, if that wasn't crazy enough, he decided to, he wanted to not just be a wrestler, but he wanted to really have a gimmick, be flamboyant, all of that stuff, which at the time was unheard of. This man inspired Dusty Rhodes. Cody Rhodes has said this man inspired him massively as well. And not only that, this guy had between 12,000 and 15,000 matches in his career. He sadly passed away last summer, but this man is Adrian Street. If you don't know him, you need to. People don't realize how vital, how important he is to the British professional, not just the British professional wrestling industry, but the professional wrestling as a whole. His impact will forever be felt. What he did, the boundaries which he pushed. I mean, listen, I don't want to say he invented the gimmick because he didn't, but boy, oh boy, he took it to a whole other level. Soul, who are you taking for your next pick, your first pick of round 3?
Well, it was going to be Adrian Street, but, well done for you, Allison, because that was a very good pick. Fans, watch the Adrian Street documentary in the WWE Network or Peacock. You'll understand why Allison picked this guy and why he's so influential, especially to the British wrestling scene. So now I'm going to have to divert now and check my notes. You know what? I'm going to bring it home for me. I'm going to bring it to Scotland. When you look at UK wrestling, yes, there's the strong style element of it, but there's also the family environment of it. Family shows, parks, and fairs that run shows. And when you look at that, it's an essential part of British wrestling. So to be on this list, you need to be able to do that. And there's one man, I think, as well, who's really cemented that. A guy who had a whole documentary crew from Vice follow him. He was a part of the BBC documentary on ICW, one of the centerfolds of this. Former ICW world champion. He's done stuff in TNA. It's yourself. It's Grado. Now, I can understand why Grado's not everyone's cup of tea, and they're going to be really confused why he's on this list. But it's mainly that family comedy environment of it. That's very essential part of British wrestling. That fun, entertaining family element of that. And Grado smashes that out of the park. He's somebody that's transcended wrestling here, especially in Scotland. Pantomime, he's on the BBC. He's done Scot Squad, which was a very popular comedy act here in the UK that was shown on BBC Scotland. He's also done his own show as well, Grado's Family Wrestling Bash, which is a great thing to see. You see it plastered all over Glasgow when you go in the city. He shows up sometimes on some local shows. He always returns to ICW when he can. Grado really is the quintessential comedy UK act, and nobody can deny his fame and glory here, especially within Scotland. I mean, Allison, you know how much I was jumping for joy just to see Grado appear at All In. So,
yes.
Yeah, Grado is literally one of the Scottish greats.
Absolutely. And what people often don't realize is he actually is a little bit of a celebrity in the UK as well. Because of all the media he's done, like you touched upon, he actually is one of the most probably well-known British wrestlers right now, which is crazy to say. But next up, Clark, it's you. Who are you picking?
I am taking Billy Robinson. Way big throwback pick, but Billy Robinson was a stud. Absolutely held every title necessary, and his accomplishments are off the charts. 1957 light heavyweight British senior freestyle wrestling champion. You look at his early years, he goes to Stu Hart's dungeon in 1969, shows up at Stu Hart's dungeon in 69 and beats Archie the Stopper Goldie. He beats, he wrestles for Vern Gagne. He goes over to Japan. He wrestles George Gordienko. The guy was in the original version of the movie The Wrestler. He wrestles Inoki. He wrestles Bockwinkel. The shoot style, all of that. Billy Robinson, easy pick for me there.
I'm so frustrated that you took him, Clark, because not only did he wrestle Inoki, he inspired him too.
Inoki.
Phenomenal pick. No doubt about it. What about you, Ignacio? Who are you taking next?
Well, I don't know. I had to cross off a bunch of the names here. You guys ruined my order here. You took away Zack Sabre Jr. for me, and then man, somebody I didn't think, if anybody's gonna take him, it's gonna be Clark, and it was Billy Robinson. So, well, I'm gonna go with somebody that everybody sees on Friday nights. I'm gonna go with Nick Aldis. First time I saw Nick Aldis was in TNA, and he was a member of the British Invasion along with Doug Williams, and they had some incredible matches with the Motor City Machine Guns and Bobby Roode and James Storm and Beer Money, and they had some great matches with Team 3D. And then as his career progressed, he went to be a single superstar, and he had some great matches, with Kurt Angle and Sting, and the list goes on and on. But where I really saw Nick Aldis kind of come into his own when he went to the NWA, and pretty much anything he was involved in the NWA was pretty much the only thing worth watching. But he became NWA champion, and he had a great couple of matches with a series of matches with Cody Rhodes. If you guys want to want to go back and look at him. I don't think that was the main event, but it was one of the main events for the very first All In, was it not?
I believe
Yes,
it
him
was.
versus Cody Rhodes. Yeah.
Yes. So they had incredible matches, but Nick Aldis pretty much embodied what an NWA world champion should be. He embodies on what a world champion should be. And he's got that tough British style. He's got that great technical style. Reminds me a lot of Bret Hart, his technical style. And he's really great and talented. He's a little bit older now. Maybe the injuries have come up to him. I still think that eventually we're going to see him at least for one match in the WWE ring, and I hope it's soon, because I really think he deserves an opportunity to showcase what he can do on that type of national or global stage. Because he's been in ROH and TNA, and TNA's been regarded as LOL TNA when they really had some great times, a great period of time there. Where they were when they were on top at their best, and Nick Aldis was there for that, but not a lot of people got to see him. So I hope he gets to showcase what he can do in WWE in some form or fashion in the ring. But yeah, that's my next draft pick, Nick Aldis. I think he's a great talent.
And that is a brilliant choice, no doubt about it. But the beauty of the snake draft, Ignacio, it comes right back to you. Who are you taking as the first pick in the 4th round?
Well, I'm going to go with somebody who's maybe not very that well known, but somebody who's just as good in a ring as William Regal, and that's Dave Taylor, or also known as Squire Dave Taylor. They were a tag team back in the day in WCW for the U.S. fans. Very short-lived. The only thing with Dave Taylor is he didn't have that personality that William Regal had. But as far as in ring, he's just as good. And if you go back and watch their matches, not only against each other, excuse me, but as a tag team, it's a shame that they didn't get a run as champions together. And he had a cup of coffee in the WWE, but again, because he wasn't the promo that Regal was, he didn't have the personality that Regal has. Wasn't great on the mic. Did minimal speaking on the mic. Didn't do a lot of character work. He was kind of overlooked. But as far as in-ring technical ability, just as good as William Regal. And yeah, that's my next pick, Dave Taylor. Very underrated English-British wrestler.
A brilliant choice, no doubt. But who are you taking next, Clark?
So this is where I'm going to get a little funky, because I don't know that anyone was going to take this one, but I just want to get him off the board before I forget to take him. But my next pick, and give me a second here, it's Peter Thornley. But it's not Peter Thornley. It's Peter Thornley, if you don't know, was the first person to don the mask as Kendo Nagasaki. And his influence on taking British wrestling over to Japan, although playing a Japanese samurai and all that he accomplished, I mean, he wrestled everybody you could during his career. Kendo Nagasaki, a.k.a. Peter Thornley, I'm going with for my next pick.
It's a great choice, no doubt about it. I mean, a lot of people, of course, don't know that he's British. In fact, a lot of people genuinely thought that he was Japanese, but no.
Well, and then the follow-up character that continued to carry the legacy of Kendo Nagasaki was Japanese. So many believe that the character, right? Like,
it's absolutely nuts, but a great pick, especially to get in the 4th round too. Fantastic. But Soul, who are you taking next? Clearly still the mute button.
Oh, mute's getting you.
You know what? I'm just gonna be ignorant now. I'm just gonna actually mute myself. I'm just gonna still be here presently. I ain't gonna be polite. I'm staying in Scotland for this one, and I had a look at how influential they were and what they've done, and they've held some great accolades. They are the only 3-time ICW Women's Champion. 2 of their reigns were over 200 days. They were in the first Queen of Insanity match as well. They were also the longest reigning NXT UK Women's Champion, and that is former Kaylee Ray of the Alba Fire, now in the WWE. Kaylee has been a very, very influential wrestler here, especially for women's wrestling in Scotland. She has done so much. She's had so many kind of barbaric and insane matches. Of course, that's why her and Piper Niven, at Viper at the time, had that Queen of Insanity match. I think it was like 10,000 thumbtacks were thrown into the ring for these two just to bounce on. She really is quintessentially one of the pillars of Scottish female wrestling with what her career has done and how many people also look up to her as well. If you're probably going to say like women's wrestlers for Scotland, it's Kaylee Ray or Piper Niven, just with how much they've done. And that's, essentially why they're on the Clash card, because their history runs deep within the city of Glasgow, and to have them come home, it's going to be a hell of a homecoming.
Absolutely. It's going to be exciting to see for sure there. I thought you were going to pick somebody else when you started then, but I reckon you might end up picking them later on. But Kaylee Ray / Alba Fire, a brilliant pick. But next, I'm going to take a former NXT UK general manager, actually. And that man is Johnny Saint. Now, if you don't know him, I mean, this guy is technically one of the most sound wrestlers in the history of professional wrestling. He was trained by a man who, you mentioned earlier, Clark, of course, and that was Billy Robinson. But yeah, I mean, this guy, his career, I think it must have been I'm trying to find out the exact number now, but I think it must have been it was nearly 50. It was over 50 years long. He debuted in 1958 and then he retired in 2015. This man, he stepped in the ring with legends from every era. He really, really did. I mean, it's absolutely, crazy how long his career was and how successful it was. Johnny Saint, former NXT UK general manager as well, from Blackpool, England, is my first pick of the 4th round. But then my first pick of the 5th round, well, I'm going to go with somebody who's a bit of a household name in the UK. Dare I say, he might just be the most famous British wrestler of all time. Now, let me make something clear. This guy, he does not belong on the list of the best 100 British wrestlers from an in-ring perspective, but from a character perspective, from, really taking the business to a place it never had been in the United Kingdom, I'm going to go for Big Daddy. I know. His in-ring skills are
It's a great
a
pick.
little
Good
controversial.
giggly man.
No, I'm not even mad.
Jesus.
That's hilarious.
He's just he's a household name, and
He is.
that, well, you can't teach that, can you? I mean, listen, whenever I mention Wrestling Republic to anybody over the age of 30, they say, "Oh, is that like what Big Daddy used to do?"
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah,
Kind of.
yeah. Him and Giant Haystacks, they had a whale of a time. But Soul, who are you taking as your first pick for the 5th round now?
So this is probably who you thought I was going to pick. I just want to read out some of her accolades for you, which she currently holds right now. She is currently the longest reigning ICW Women's Champion. She also holds the Progress Women's Championship. She also holds the TNT Women's Tag Team Championship with Emerson Jane. And she also holds the North Tag Team Championships with Emerson Jane, as well as the TGW Women's Champion. She's only been doing this for 9 years, but she's made a hell of a statement here within the UK scene. And that is Rio. Now, Rio, I've had the pleasure to interview Rio just after her ICW Women's Championship win against Molly Spartan in that insane match where I'm sure people seen the social media clips where she gets pushed off the balcony right down onto the ring. And to know that these two history with the story of it, it's phenomenal. Honestly, I'm not going to try and plug my own stuff here because that'd be a bit too cheeky of me. But just to learn about Rio and Molly's history with one another, and they're going to relive that history for the 3rd time at ICW After Hours, I believe it is, after Clash. That's exciting in itself. But Rio really is probably one of the hottest female names right now in the UK scene. And with that time she's done, holding all those belts at the same time, that's a lot for somebody. And she's absolutely killing it, honestly. When the TNA Gut Check came around last year, I was shocked Rio's name was not picked. If she was there, I think she would have been absolutely signed and she would have been Knockouts champion by now. 100% believe that. Rio, literally right now, I said Kaylee Ray was the pillar of the past for women's Scottish wrestling. Rio is right now the pillar for UK wrestling in general.
I agree. I completely agree. So a phenomenal pick. Again, wasn't actually who I thought you were going to go for, but Rio is a brilliant choice, no doubt about it. Potentially, dare I say, right now, my favorite British women's wrestler. In fact, not even dare I say, I will say it. She is
Hey.
tremendous, no doubt. Clark, who are you taking for your pick in the 5th round?
I gotta say, I love that Soul has taken 2 from the women's division, and I haven't yet, so I need to. And looking at the board, it's only logical. I gotta take Paige Saraya for the influence that she's had on professional wrestling. Paige / Saraya is my next pick. Between WWE, the movie, AEW, all of it, her family's history, the story, everything about it, overcoming the injury and returning. She's always got a spot on my team for sure, and I'm just hoping for more good stuff from her in the future because we know how talented she is. That injury though is gruesome and was gruesome. People don't get put out for 7 years if they're not hurt that badly.
Yeah, fantastic pick. I'm actually surprised Soraya's been, left to the 5th round, actually. But yeah, she's had a huge, impact on British wrestling as well. I mentioned, Big Daddy's probably the most well-known name. Well, the second most well-known name is probably Paige, or as people call her, the woman from Norwich who had the movie about her. That's what everybody who comes up to me says, and they don't know her name. And I'm always like, well, I always used to be like, oh, it's Paige. It's easy.
It used to be
Now
Paige.
Now I'm like, well, it's also Saraya. It's all confusing.
Thanks a lot, Vince.
She wished she didn't go to AEW. Talking about somebody who wishes negative on AEW, Ignacio, who are you taking for your pick in the 5th round, followed by your pick in the 6th and final round?
Well, I'm going to go with somebody, I don't know, I thought they'd be a household name, but maybe you could tell me somebody who's also a blast from the past and who I think is a household name in the European circuit. But I'm going to go with somebody who was a well-known tag team partner of Big Daddy. I'm going to go with Giant Haystacks.
Brilliant.
Or Haystacks
Yes.
Calhoun, as you know, in Canada, the United States, who also had a little feud with Kendo Nagasaki. But yeah, Giant Haystacks, not known for his in-ring ability as you well documented, Ben, with Big Daddy, but he was just such a big opposing figure. I mean, he was the European maybe equivalent as far as size and stature, maybe that imposing personality is maybe like an Andre the Giant. Of course, Andre's Andre, and Andre was a global phenomenon, right? But yeah, Giant Haystacks, Europe, Canada, Japan. He did a little run in the United States as Haystacks Calhoun, and then he came later back in the mid '90s with WCW, and he was known as Loch Ness. And he was there for a couple copies. Unfortunately, he was a member of that dreaded Dungeon of Doom, debacle. But that was the later part of his career, and he had injuries, and he was always a very heavy guy. And I think he passed away not too long after, a couple of years after, maybe. But just the imposing figure he was. Again, he's not a technical superstar, but he was a monster, and he was a monster when the monsters ruled the wrestling world in the 60s, 70s, and then the 80s and into the 90s. So he'd be my next 5th draft pick, Giant Haystacks.
That is a brilliant choice, no doubt about it, Ignacio. I mean, sorry, technical difficulties there.
Is it me? Wait, what?
I was gonna say, isn't it right back to Ignacio?
It is right back to Ignacio. But on the topic of Giant Haystacks, you mentioned, is he a household name? Indeed, he is a household name.
That's
and probably the most famous match in the history of British wrestling isn't actually Adam Cole versus MJF, like AEW would want you to believe. And it is also not Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre, like WWE would want you to believe. It is actually Wembley Stadium, Big Daddy versus Giant Haystacks.
There you go, yeah.
And it ended in a double count out.
There you go.
It was awful. Absolutely awful. But Ignacio, who you take it as your 6th and final pick?
Well, I don't know. I'm crossed off everywhere on my list. Either I picked them or you took them. And I got Stitches here. I asked her. She can't tell me anybody. So the only person that's left that I'd see, I don't know if he qualifies, but I'm going to go with because he had influence in the business, in the ring and out of the ring, especially help build up that WWE women's division. I'm gonna go with Fit Finley.
Oh, he loves to fight. That was my pick. Dang it.
Fit Finley. Phenomenal talent. Again, that aggressive European style. Man, I was just trying to think right now of what the year was. But if you have Peacock, and you go into the WWE network, go look at WCW Uncensored. I think it's 98.
8 is, I believe, right. If it's not 8, it's 7.
In 97, 98, go look up WCW Uncensored 97, 98, and him and Regal just beat the holy turd out of each other. I mean, it's a bloodfest. I mean, it's a work shoot, if you want to call it that. But man, it's an incredible match, unlike anything that we saw on TV for that time. This is it's actually during NWO, but it's something different that we saw that we were watching on TV at that time. A very aggressive style. But he had great matches with Regal. He had great matches in WWE when he went to WWE, and he was instrumental in. And just like Dutch Mantel was instrumental in the development of the TNA knockouts, Fit Finley was instrumental in developing the WWE women's division, right? Trish Stratus, all those women in the 2000s, they all compliment Fit Finley as being their influence, who really taught him how to wrestle. And he's a great wrestler. He's had a great influence in the ring, outside the ring. And I think within the coming years, as these women start getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, we're going to be seeing a lot of their speeches, including Fit Finley.
That is a great shout. And yes, he absolutely does count. He was born in Northern Ireland, so he is British. And yeah, a great choice, no doubt about it. Clark, you're up next. Who are you going to take as your 6th and final pick?
So Fit was 100% where I was going to finish this because I love Fit Finley myself. It's a great pick. Although it's funny because in a weird way, it actually worked out perfectly because I'm going to take a guy that I don't think anybody would have took, but deserves a spot here. One of the earliest best heels in wrestling. A guy that legitimately added the forearm to the context of professional wrestling matches. He's got the best short arm, forearm, front side jab, forearm jab, maybe of all time. And a guy that's worked with and inspired a ton of other wrestlers. Rest in peace, obviously, but Mick McManus is my final pick in the draft. He's got to stay on it. It's way old. Hard to even find great tape, but Mick McManus will be my final pick in the draft. And I like that I got him and Billy Robinson, two true pioneers on my team. You throw in Paige, speaking of pioneers, I'm satisfied with my roster there. That's a fun way to round it out.
Absolutely a great choice. But Saul, how are you going to round it out?
This is tough. This is very tough. I had 20 names here to really cut down. People I want to honorable mentions quickly: Joe Hendry, Molly Spartan, passed away sadly, Lionheart. So many great names. Obviously, Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate. But looking at it, I had to pick a guy, obviously, from Scotland again, because, bias. But this is a guy who, Grado was the star of the first documentary for ICW, which really got it popular. This guy was the star alongside Drew of the second. They say, what is the definition of insanity? But I know this guy is the king of insanity, and that is the current ICW World Champion, Jack Jester. Jack Jester, for those who don't know, is truly a man who gave it his all. If you watch that second documentary on ICW, you see how his moment when he wins the ICW World Championship and he has his family in the crowd, of how much it means to him. You see his daily life, from Glasgow, seeing him grow and evolve with ICW. He's got his faction of the Kinky Party, which he's won tag titles within ICW. He's always been a standout guy there, and I know he's working alongside the backstage element of ICW now in this current era. If you were pretty much to go into people in the Scottish scene, who represents who? Grado would be the family entertainment, Drew would be the megastar, but Jack Jester would be the hardcore, insane part of Scottish wrestling. It's the reason why the King of Insanity match is named after him. The dude does not, pull back full throttle, he will go to any lengths to get the free count and have him being raised above as the winner. And also, he's just loved as well. He loves a good pint of tennis, so I like a tennis drinker in my books. I think I've got a good list.
That is a very good list indeed, and a great way to round it out. But guys, I am afraid that I've got some bad news, and the bad news is that we are at the end of the list. And the bad news for Wade Barrett is he's not getting picked because I'm not actually going to pick
Jesus.
him.
That's gold.
Cheeky.
Instead, I am going to pick somebody who I think would have been higher on this list if he wasn't a Tottenham fan and therefore just was allergic to winning the big one. And that man is Pete Dunne. I mean, Pete Dunne, this guy was, despite the fact that Tyler Bate was, the first NXT UK champion, or just at that time UK champion, Pete Dunne was really the face of that brand. He truly, truly was. And he is so underrated even now. As much as I hate to say it, he is. And I mean, this guy, he was like really, I guess, the face, dare I say, of, the big boom the British wrestling period had in 2015, 2016, 2017. And I mean, he was so young as well, but his maturity, it took him to a whole other level. But unfortunately, when he got to WWE, when he got to the main roster, just like his football team, Tottenham, he choked. But in all seriousness, Pete Dunne truly is a heck of a talent. Now, guys, I am going to quickly read out all our picks, right? Because I've written them down in order. So, to start off with, I took Drew McIntyre, Soul took Will Ospreay, Clark took the British Bulldog, Ignacio took Dynamite Kid, then he took Chris Adams, Clark took William Regal, Soul took Nigel McGuinness, I took Zack Sabre Jr., followed by Adrian Street, Soul took Grado, Clark took Billy Robinson, Ignacio took Nick Aldis, and then Dave Taylor, while Clark took Nagasaki, and then Soul took Kaylee Ray / Alba Fire, and I took Johnny Saint, followed by the household name Big Daddy. Any American fans, well, most American fans will be confused. Then Soul took Rio, Clark took Soraya, Ignacio took Giant Haystacks, then Fit Finley, Clark took Mick
McManus. I got you.
That's the one. Soul took Jack Jester, and I took Mr. Pete Dunne. Of course, Wade Barrett left out. Also, Pippa Niven left out as well. Of course, competing for the Women's Championship next week. That was a surprise person I thought to be left out.
Is that who you think I was going to pick?
That's who I thought you were going to pick. I was surprised you didn't pick. Yeah.
Look, it was Kaylee Ray or Piper Niven, and Kaylee Ray just edged it out with her long title reigns of the ICW World Championship. I mean, that's what.
And the NXT UK one too. I mean, Piper. I mean, I saw her years ago in World of Sport, and I mean, like ever since, she's just gone over about her. She truly, truly does, and has improved so much. But guys, that does bring us to the end of the show. Thank you to Ignacio, thank you to Soul, and thank you to Clark for joining me here today. Shard is shocked that I picked Pete Dunne, and he's also shocked that he's the last pick.
Got to see the rest of the draft.
Well, look, educate yourself on Scottish wrestling, fellas. You'll find out that there are some big names up here. I'm going to love it. Right,
great draft.
How many people in the comments are going to say, "Where's Roddy Piper?" Because they're going to be idiots. They're going to be idiots, aren't they? Where's Roddy Piper? Do your research, idiots.
Yeah, he's actually Canadian.
Yeah.
Shot yourself in the foot.
Not even American.
But absolutely really fun show, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed, being part of it. And we will see you guys. Well, we'll see you guys later on tonight. NXT off the air for the Battleground pay-per-view. Clark, Shard, and Megan today filling in for Drizzy. And then, of course,
happy anniversary, Drizzy. Sorry.
Yes, shout out, Drizzy. And then tomorrow, Mailbag Monday. Send in those questions, guys. We will see you then. Pa.